Hey everyone. So let's talk about your paycheck. But, not just the number you see at the end of the month. We're going to dive a little deeper into all that hidden value, the perks, the benefits, all the good stuff that makes up your total compensation. And more importantly, we're going to explore the world of Malaysian tax exemptions to figure out how much of that value you actually get to keep. So let me just kick this off with a really important question, something that hits you right in the wallet. Are you paying tax on income you don't actually have to? I mean, think about it. It's a huge question, right? And getting the answer could literally mean more money in your pocket. So, to get to the bottom of that, here's our game plan. First, we're going to break down the basics. What is tax exempt income anyway? Then we'll get into the fun stuff, your everyday work perks that you might not even realize are tax free. We'll also touch on exemptions for special jobs and even those big life and career milestones. And finally, we'll pull it all together so you know exactly what this means for you and your money. Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1, what is tax-exempt income? Let's get down to the basics of what you're earning. All right, so in simple terms, tax-exempt income is basically a portion of what you get from your employer that legally you don't have to pay income tax on. It's all laid out in Malaysia's Income Tax Act of 1967. The law basically says, hey, not every single thing your boss gives you is taxable. Some types of income are specially carved out. They're protected from tax. So the easiest way to picture this is to think of your total compensation as being split into two different buckets. In one bucket, you've got your taxable income. This is your main salary and any benefits that you do pay tax on. But then in the other bucket, you have your exempt income. This is the good stuff, the portion that's legally shielded from tax. And what does that mean? Well, it means more of that money stays with you. Okay, so now that we've got the basics down, let's get to the really practical part, your everyday work perks. We're going to look at all those allowances and benefits you might not even realize are exempt. This is where you can really find some hidden value. So check this out. Here are some of the most common ones you'll see. But, and this is super important, pay attention to that key condition column. The devil's really in the details here. For example, that travel allowance, it's only tax-free if it's for official work duties, not for your daily drive to the office. And for medical stuff, it's usually only exempt when your company pays you back for what you actually spent. Let's dig a little deeper with a classic example, the company car. It's a great perk, right? Now, if you're using that car only for work stuff, like visiting clients or going to meetings, that benefit is typically tax exempt. But the second you start using it for personal errands, like grocery shopping or weekend trips, well, that's where it gets tricky. A part of that benefit's value might suddenly become taxable. Okay, here's another one that really trips a lot of people up, medical benefits. It's all about how you get the money. So if your company pays your medical bill directly or pays you back after you've paid it, that's a reimbursement, and it's usually tax-free. But if they just give you a fixed cash allowance every month for medical expenses, what they call cash in lieu, that's different. That cash is typically just treated as part of your salary, and yep, you guessed it, it's taxable. The how is absolutely key here. All right, let's move on. It turns out it's not always about what the perk is. Sometimes it's about the kind of job you actually do. Let's look at some exemptions for special rules. Yeah, so depending on your situation, there are some pretty specific rules. For instance, if you get sent to work overseas, your income might be exempt because of special tax agreements between countries. It's basically to make sure you don't get taxed twice on the same money. There are also important exemptions for disabled employees, covering things like special allowances or equipment they need to do their job. And sometimes the government wants to boost a certain industry, right? So they'll offer tax breaks to attract talent, like knowledge workers, to those specific sectors. Okay, for our next section, let's shift gears and talk about the big stuff, those major life and career milestones. Because believe it or not, these big moments have their own tax implications too. So, let's talk about retirement. When you finally hang up your boots after a long career, there are some really nice tax breaks waiting for you. For example, that gratuity payment, which is really just a big thank you bonus from your employer for all your hard work, can be tax exempt, at least up to a certain point. The same often goes for pensions. It's the system's way of rewarding that long-term dedication. What about actually owning a piece of the company? That's where something called an employee share option scheme, or ESOS, comes in. It can be an amazing perk. But I've got to be honest, the tax rules here can be tricky. Whether or not the money you make from these shares is tax-free really depends on the nitty-gritty details of the specific plan. So you absolutely have to read the fine print on this one. And let's not forget about approved retirement funds, like a Provident Fund. Here's the cool part. When your employer puts money into this fund for you, that contribution isn't taxed. It just goes right in and it gets to grow over the years tax-free. You only have to think about taxes way, way down the road when you actually start taking the money out in retirement. Phew. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. Different rules, all sorts of exceptions. So now let's get to the most important question. What does all of this actually mean for you? It's time to put this knowledge into action. So to wrap your head around all this, it helps to just think of it in 4 main categories. You've got your everyday allowances, those common benefits in kind like a company car, the special exemptions for certain jobs, and finally, those big life and career milestones. If you keep these 4 buckets in mind, it'll be way easier to spot where you might be saving on tax. Look, at the end of the day, your base salary, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The true value of your job is the whole package, everything combined. And when you really understand these tax exemptions, you get a much clearer picture of what your compensation is actually worth. And that knowledge, that's power. It helps you make way smarter decisions about your career and your finances. So I'll leave you with one final thought. The next time you get your payslip or you're looking at your benefits package, what's one thing you're going to look at a little differently now? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me.